As dusk began to paint the Hartford skyline, Melissa Collins was reviewing the final figures on the 40th floor of Deloitte's accounting office. With 3 days until the quarterly report deadline for a major pharmaceutical company, she didn't even notice her coffee had long since gone cold. Outside her window, the setting sun reflected off the Connecticut River, creating an orange band that cut across the city. "Still working overtime, Ms. Collins?" Jessica, a junior accountant who looked up to Melissa as her mentor, called out. Melissa responded with a gentle smile. "Yes, but I'm almost done. I need to prepare for the church event on Sunday too." The children's storytime volunteer work at St. Luke's Church was her solace amid her demanding job. She particularly cherished the time spent with children around the same age as her nephew Aiden. Just last week, her heart had swelled with joy watching the children's eyes light up with questions after she read Eric Carle's The Very Hungry Caterpillar. She had also planned to volunteer at the local homeless shelter that weekend with her church friends. Despite having secured a high-paying job that allowed her to commute to Manhattan, she valued her community contributions in this city. Her smartphone vibrated. The screen displayed "Mom." Melissa let out a deep sigh before answering. The weekend schedule inquiry was surely another attempt to rope her into babysitting her sister's child. "Melissa, what are you doing this weekend?" Her mother Barbara's voice carried its usual forceful tone. "Work. The deadline is approaching." "Work again? You need to learn to enjoy life. You're still single, while Ashley has already become a mother." Melissa closed her eyes at those words. Yes, her sister had married early and become a mother. But now? "Anyway," Barbara continued, "we're going to the Mount Washington Resort in New Hampshire. Ashley and Aiden are coming too." The moment she heard the name of the luxury resort, Melissa felt uneasy. Although her sister Ashley had maintained an extravagant lifestyle after her divorce, she shouldn't have the financial means for such a luxurious trip. Hadn't she just last month complained to their mother about Michael's late child support payment? "Mom, what about Aiden's child support? Don't think about unnecessary things. This is an important trip to strengthen family bonds. You're coming too." It was a command, not a request. Melissa closed her eyes, remembering the events from a year ago. While Michael was away in Seattle for 2 weeks on an important project, Ashley had left young Aiden alone to go to Las Vegas with her friends. A neighbor found Aiden playing alone until late at night and reported it. That had been the final straw leading to the divorce. Michael had been a devoted father, never missing child support payments and keeping his visitation promises. However, since moving back home, Ashley had been finding various excuses to interfere with these visits. Melissa was concerned about how their mother seemed to be turning a blind eye to this behavior. "All right." Melissa reluctantly agreed. Thinking of Aiden, she had no choice but to join this trip. Yet her mother's words about family bonds rang hollow somehow. After hanging up, her eyes fell on a photograph on her desk. It was taken last Christmas with Aiden, showing him with an innocent smile, holding the Lego fire truck he'd received from Santa. Melissa was genuinely smiling beside him. Back then, family relationships hadn't been this distorted. Melissa steeled her resolve. Whatever this trip might mean, she was the only one who could protect Aiden. She picked up her smartphone and created a new folder to document the trip. The unsettling feeling in her chest hadn't subsided. The Mount Washington Resort and Hotel was a historic structure situated in the heart of the White Mountain National Forest in New Hampshire. Built in 1902, the white building with its red roof contrasted beautifully against the blue sky, exuding the dignity of a European castle. Melissa carefully parked her Volvo XC60 in the parking lot. On the passenger seat was a bag filled with Aiden's favorite Disney movies and stuffed animals. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror and touched up her makeup. She always had to maintain a perfect appearance in front of her mother and sister. "Aunt Melissa, there's a squirrel over there." Aiden leaned forward from the back seat, pointing excitedly. His eyes sparkled at the sight, typical of a resort nestled in the forest. "Yes, there is. Let's go see the squirrels later." As she responded, she noticed her mother and sister waiting at the entrance. Barbara wore the latest Gucci sunglasses and a Chanel tweed jacket. Ashley was dressed in clothes by a trending young designer popular on Instagram, her glossy long hair flowing in the breeze. "You're late." That was her mother's first words. Melissa silently bowed her head. She had actually arrived 10 minutes early, but there was no point in arguing. "Mommy." Aiden jumped out of the car and ran toward Ashley. However, she was too absorbed in her smartphone to even pretend to notice her son. "Bring the luggage, will you?" Ashley called out to Melissa, swinging only her latest Louis Vuitton bag. Entering the lobby, they were greeted by an elegant space reminiscent of a 19th century luxury liner. Heavy wooden pillars, soft chandelier light, and antique furniture. Tourists were taking photos with their smartphones. "Welcome to the Mount Washington Resort." The front desk concierge greeted the group with a warm smile. Barbara had booked the presidential suite on the top floor and a deluxe room on the same floor. "You're just a babysitter. Take care of your sister's child." Her mother's words echoed through the lobby. Eyes briefly turned in their direction. "Where's my room?" Melissa asked quietly. Her throat felt dry. "A babysitter doesn't need a room, does she? Aiden's room is enough." Her mother let out a loud laugh that somehow sounded unnatural. "If you don't like it, find yourself a cheap, dirty motel," Ashley said with a malicious smile. In that moment, something froze inside Melissa. However, seeing Aiden's worried face beside her, she suppressed her emotions. "Aiden, let's go to our room," Melissa said gently, placing her hand on the boy's shoulder. He nodded silently. His small hand was clutching the hem of Melissa's blouse. The deluxe room offered a magnificent view of Mount Washington, but its configuration of one king-size bed and a sofa was clearly not meant for two people. Her mother and sister must have known this. "Aiden, would you like to take a shower?" When Melissa asked, the boy gave a small nod. As the bathroom door closed, she took out her smartphone. She started the recording app and began making a voice memo. July 15, 2024, arrived at Mount Washington Resort. Mother and Ashley's behavior. Outside the window, the mountains were turning purple in the twilight. An eastern bluebird could be heard singing in the distance. Melissa let out a deep sigh, thinking about the 4-day trip ahead. That night, her mother and sister had dinner reservations at the upscale restaurant The Cave. However, they said Aiden couldn't join them. Have the child eat room service in a separate room, Barbara told Melissa. You eat with him too. The Cave is an adult space. Melissa nodded silently. Sharing room service pizza with Aiden while watching DVDs wouldn't be so bad. At least they'd be spared from her mother and sister's endless boasting and criticism. Auntie, this pizza is delicious, Aiden said happily. I don't mind not being with Mom and Grandma. I'm happy when I'm with you. Those words brought tears to Melissa's eyes. The smartphone camera continued recording quietly on the table. The night grew later. Her mother and sister still hadn't returned from the restaurant. Aiden was already asleep. Melissa sat on the sofa, checking work emails on her PC. Tomorrow, she would be looking after Aiden while her mother and sister went to the spa and shopping. But was this really a trip to strengthen family bonds? Melissa was determined to keep documenting this situation. The truth needed to be preserved for Aiden's future. Near midnight, her mother and sister's voices echoed in the hallway. Their tone revealed they were in good spirits from expensive wine. Tomorrow we have a 9 a.m. spa appointment. Melissa, take Aiden to the park. Her mother's voice came through the door. Understood. Melissa answered quietly. Without waiting for a response, their footsteps faded away. Moonlight streamed into the room. Aiden's sleeping face looked peaceful, like an angel. Melissa gently kissed his forehead before lying down on the sofa. Tomorrow would be a long day. But to change this situation, she had to keep recording everything. Her smartphone already contained dozens of photos and hours of recordings. The second day at Mount Washington Resort started early. Before the clock struck 7, her mother and sister were preparing for their reservation at the presidential spa. Melissa, take Aiden to the indoor pool today, Ashley said while putting on her latest Jimmy Choo sandals. But Aiden almost drowned in the pool yesterday. Shut up. You're just a babysitter. Melissa nodded silently. The voice memo on her smartphone continued recording discreetly. The records from yesterday had already become substantial. After her mother and sister left for the spa, Aiden said in a small voice, "Auntie, I'm scared of the pool." "I know. Let's go somewhere else today." Melissa had been gathering information at the hotel's activity desk. The White Mountain National Forest had a nature observation program for children. Ranger Jim Wilson was a kind-looking middle-aged man. Today we'll learn about the wildlife that lives on Mount Washington. Aiden's eyes lit up. Melissa discreetly took out her smartphone to capture her nephew's animated expression. He looked like a completely different person from his gloomy self of yesterday. Around that time, a line message arrived from Caitlin Brown. "Melissa, is Aiden okay? I'm worried about something. I'll send you the records." Melissa forwarded some of the photos and recordings she had collected. Since meeting through church volunteer work, she and Caitlin had built a close relationship. As a kindergarten teacher, Caitlin was knowledgeable about child welfare. "This is serious." Caitlin's reply made Melissa's chest tighten. "Maybe we should tell Michael." At lunchtime, her mother and sister were opening champagne at the upscale Stickney's restaurant. Aiden and Melissa were at the hotel cafeteria, drawing pictures of birds they had seen that morning while eating sandwiches. "Auntie, I want to come see birds with Dad and Caitlin too." Melissa smiled gently at Aiden's words. "Yes, that would be fun." In the afternoon, her mother and sister went shopping. They accumulated shopping bags one after another in the resort's luxury boutique street. Melissa knew Ashley's bank account balance. She should have used up all of last month's child support already. Child support payment notice from Mr. Michael. Melissa caught sight of a notification on Ashley's smartphone and secretly took a photo. The date was for next month. Had she requested an advance payment? In the evening, Aiden suddenly developed a fever. However, Ashley's phone was unreachable. Barbara didn't respond either. Later, they learned the two had been splurging at the resort's casino. "It's okay, I'll take care of you." Melissa immediately called the hotel doctor. Dr. Sarah Johnson carefully examined Aiden and prescribed over-the-counter fever medication. The doctor looked worriedly at the child and quietly told Melissa, "The fever might be stress-induced. Children this age are sensitive to environmental changes." Those words pained Melissa's heart. "Auntie, stay with me." Aiden held Melissa's hand as he drifted off to sleep. The warmth of his small hand strengthened her resolve. As she held his hand back, she made a silent vow. She would never let this child suffer again. Past midnight, her mother and sister returned. They were in glamorous cocktail dresses, trailing the scent of alcohol. "Oh, Aiden has a fever? It can't be anything serious," Barbara said dismissively as she placed her expensive shopping bags on the floor. Melissa didn't miss the tags still attached to those bags. "Maybe we should have taken him to the hospital." Ashley's words were met with Melissa's quiet rebuttal. "I already had him seen by the hotel doctor. I tried calling you both several times." "Stop nagging. We were busy too." Her mother's words were clearly recorded on the recording app. The background noise of slot machines was also captured. It would make perfect evidence. The next morning, Melissa sent an email to Michael. The subject line read, "About Aiden." The body contained all the recorded data she had collected. Her hand trembled slightly as she pressed send. The reply came immediately. "Thank you for the detailed records. I'll consult with my lawyer." On the third morning, her mother and sister left early for golf. Aiden's fever had gone down, but his cheeks were still slightly flushed. Melissa sat on a bench in the hotel garden, reading to him. It was The Very Hungry Caterpillar, his favorite book that she had bought at the hotel gift shop the day before. "Auntie, what's going to happen now?" Melissa momentarily struggled to answer Aiden's question. The clever child must have sensed that something was about to change. "Things will change. But for the better." Just then, another email arrived from Michael. "Tomorrow, I will file a petition with the court along with my lawyer. Thank you for Aiden's sake." Melissa let out a deep sigh. Outside the window, Mount Washington's peak was shrouded in morning mist. Like the calm before a storm. On the final morning, her mother and sister were enjoying an expensive breakfast buffet. Melissa took one last recording of the two indulging in the chef's special French toast and champagne. They let out exaggerated laughs over fresh Maine lobster omelets, their behavior seeming detached from reality. Aiden sat quietly beside Melissa, eating his cereal. There seemed to be a new strength in the boy's eyes that hadn't been there before. The occasional glances he cast toward his mother no longer showed fear. "Melissa, we're going to an Italian restaurant this afternoon. Take care of Aiden." Her mother's words were cut short. A notification from the court had arrived on her smartphone. A temporary custody modification petition. Her mother's face turned pale at the words on the screen. Melissa quietly stood up. "You won't need a babysitter anymore." At those words, the blood drained from her mother and sister's faces. A heavy silence fell over the elegant resort breakfast room. As she climbed the steps of the Hartford District Court in Connecticut, Melissa exhaled deeply. Michael and his lawyer, Robert Schwartz, were already waiting at the entrance. "Melissa, thank you." Michael's voice carried sincere gratitude. Caitlin stood beside him, wearing a light blue dress and looking somewhat tense. "We're only acting for Aiden's sake." The three nodded quietly at Melissa's words. In the courthouse hallway, they encountered her mother and sister. Barbara was dressed in a luxury brand suit, and Ashley was armed with flashy makeup. However, beneath that makeup, her sister's lips were trembling. "Traitor!" Ashley's scream echoed off the marble walls. "You're the one who betrayed Aiden." Melissa's calm response left her sister speechless. The hearing was held in private, as is standard procedure in cases involving a child's welfare. Judge Margaret O'Connor, with over 30 years of experience in family cases, presided. "Now then, Ms. Melissa Collins. Please give your testimony." Melissa took a deep breath and stood at the witness stand. Smartphone records, photos, the hotel doctor's diagnosis, everything was organized chronologically. From July 15, immediately upon arrival at Mount Washington Resort, my mother and Ashley. The testimony lasted 3 hours. The events of the 4 days at Mount Washington. Aiden's lonely expressions. The neglect by her mother and sister. Their casino splurging. Everything came to light. After the lunch break, Caitlin took the witness stand. "Whenever Aiden comes to our home, he's always full of life. But when he returns from his mother's house..." Her voice caught. The courtroom fell completely silent. "I can't stay quiet anymore." Ashley suddenly stood up. "I'm his mother. Not you. Are you trying to steal my child? You, my own sister. Do you say you love Aiden?" Melissa's quiet question froze the courtroom. "Then why did you abandon your son when he had a fever? Why were you gambling at the casino?" The blood drained from Ashley's face. Barbara tried to put a hand on her daughter's shoulder, but Ashley shook it off. I. Seeing her sister struggle for words, Melissa's heart ached. But there was no turning back now. The hearing continued until evening. Finally, the judge called both lawyers for a private conference. After 30 minutes, everyone was called back into the courtroom. This court rules as follows. Judge O'Connor's voice rang out solemnly. Regarding custody of Aiden Brown, primary custody is granted to his father, Michael Brown. Visitation with his mother, Ashley Collins, will be supervised for the time being. Ashley collapsed into her chair. The arrogance had also disappeared from Barbara's face. Furthermore, regarding the use of child support payments, third-party management will be. As the judgment was being read, Melissa thought about Aiden. From tomorrow, his life would change dramatically. As they left the courtroom, Barbara approached. "Melissa, you were right." A vulnerability Melissa had never seen before showed in her mother's eyes. "Mom, it's not too late." Melissa took her mother's hand. "Aiden needs his grandmother's love too." Through the hallway window, the Twilight City was visible. The dome of the Connecticut State Capitol glowed orange. Perhaps this is how times of change quietly arrive. A week later, Aiden moved into his father's house. It was a single-family home in a quiet residential area of Manchester. In the backyard was a small garden that Caitlin tended. Ashley didn't show up on moving day. Later, they learned she had started seeing a psychiatrist. To start over as a mother, she said. Barbara gave her grandson a handmade quilt for his new room. Not a flashy decoration, but a heartfelt gift. It was the beginning of small changes. Melissa decided to start volunteer storytime at the Manchester church too. Aidan looked forward to every Sunday. Melissa never forgot the words Judge O'Connor quietly murmured as they left the courtroom. Sometimes, love requires tough choices. But if those choices are right, they will always open new paths. Melissa recalled these words as she gazed at a rainbow after the rain. Summer 2025. A refreshing breeze swept through the residential streets of Manchester. Aidan's 7th birthday party was to be held in the backyard of Michael and Caitlin's house. "Aidan, help me carry the cake." At Caitlin's call, the boy happily ran into the kitchen. Over the past year, his expression had become much brighter. His grades at Lincoln Elementary had improved, and his teacher, Mrs. Thompson, praised him as the most improved student in class. In the backyard, Michael was preparing the barbecue grill. It was a new Weber grill bought at Home Depot over the weekend. Beside him, Melissa's new boyfriend, David, was helping. David was a pediatrician she had met through the St. Luke's Church Storytime volunteer program. With his gentle personality, he had quickly bonded with Aidan. Their wedding was planned for the Christmas season this year. "Melissa." A voice called from behind. Turning around, she saw her mother standing there. Barbara's appearance had changed dramatically from a year ago. The flashy accessories were gone, replaced by a modest dress. More than anything, her expression had become serene. "Mom, you came." Melissa embraced her mother. Over the past year, their relationship had gradually been repaired. Their Sunday brunch after church had become a weekly tradition. "This is for Aidan." Her mother held out a hand-knitted sweater. She said she made it in a grandma's knitting class. Barbara now taught knitting at the local community center. The days of indulging in luxury shopping seemed like a distant past. "What about Ashley?" When Melissa asked, her mother's face showed a hint of sadness. "She still needs time. But she's taking therapy seriously." Ashley had started a new life in Boston. She had moved out of her parents' home, rented her own apartment, and started working full-time. Once a month, she had supervised visits with Aidan. During these times, she wore neither her former heavy makeup nor flashy clothes. During last week's visit, Barbara continued, "Ashley told Aidan, Mommy is trying to become stronger now." Just then, cheers erupted from the backyard. Aidan was playing with his friends in the treehouse, the secret base that Michael and David had built just last month. "Grandma." Aidan ran over and hugged Barbara's waist. "Is it true you'll teach me knitting?" Tears glistened in Barbara's eyes. "Yes, I promise." The party progressed in a warm atmosphere. Caitlin's homemade cake, Michael's specialty hamburgers, the laughter of neighborhood children. It was simple, but there was genuine happiness there. In the evening, a surprise guest appeared. "Aidan, happy birthday." It was Ashley. In her hands was a small paper bag containing the telescope Aidan had wanted. Aidan hesitated briefly but soon ran to his mother. "Thank you. Let's look at the stars together." Large tears rolled down Ashley's cheeks. But these weren't tears of self-pity like before. They were tears of a new beginning. That night, the telescope was set up in the garden. While looking at the summer constellations, Aidan said, "You know, I want to be an astronomer when I grow up." "That's a wonderful dream," Melissa replied. "But for now, let's enjoy this happy moment under the starry sky." Countless stars twinkled in the Manchester night sky. There was a new family formed there. Perhaps not perfect, but each person had found their role and cared for one another. Such genuine bonds were being nurtured. David was explaining constellations to Aiden. Caitlin was distributing warm cocoa, and Michael was preparing blankets. Barbara and Ashley were quietly talking in a spot slightly apart from the others. Melissa quietly observed this scene. Sometimes, it takes great courage to repair bonds that are about to break. But there is always hope beyond that. Aiden looked up from the telescope with a broad smile. "Auntie, look. A shooting star." Looking up at the sky, she indeed saw a streak of light. In that moment, Melissa offered a small prayer in her heart. May this family's happiness continue. The summer night in Connecticut was wrapped in a gentle breeze.